maybe the easiest ones will just omit because you can just you can give solution descriptions to one another from the person who solved the task. Then for the medium ones, well, these medium ones weren't really medium ones, they were medium hard ones. On these I would like to stop for a longer period of time because today we'll be concentrating on some dynamic programming. And then at the very end I will tell a few words about the three tasks that were actually not solved. Well, they were actually killers, like killer problems that were supposed to be killer problems that almost nobody managed to solve them at any contest whatsoever. So we don't have to really get into these too much because they were designed so that not too many people solve them. Okay. So the first two problems, or maybe the first three problems, there's one problem, do it tomorrow. And the problem do it tomorrow, as I see that all the teams solved, so we don't have to get into details about this problem. So they decided not to do it tomorrow, but it is today. There was this problem about inversions, and also almost everyone who attempted this problem solved it. And I guess that the problem about inversions has so many different solutions. Just anyone can come up with a different solution, and most of the solutions just work. So like we will be talking for 1 hour about the different solutions to this problem. I don't think it's worth doing that right now. And there was this funny problem about DNA, which was actually not that difficult. In this problem, we had to just find the log for a given string S. We were to find a string T such that the longest common subsequence of S and T is minimal. So I guess that most of you had the same solution, the teams who tried that attempted this problem, which was how do you construct a string T?
Repeat the letter that was last.
Yes, we take the least frequent letter in S, and we just repeat it because the length of S should be equal to the length of T should be N. So we just take N times least frequent letter of S. Yes, and here the proof is quite simple because well, first of all the other letters have at least the same frequency as the least frequent letter. However, so if the least frequent letter of S has k occurrences, we know that k is at most n divided by 4. And whenever we take any t, it contains at least k occurrences of some letter from this ACG. So, and if it contains at least k letters of some of these, then it contains, and the string S also contains at least k letters of all, at least k occurrences of all these letters. Then we're choosing the least frequent letter. You cannot get below k occurrences in this when choosing this string. And actually, this is a nice example of a problem for which the results of the teams are really depend on what happens in the rank list. For instance, when we had the same contest in Poland, like people read the problem and well, I have no idea how to solve it, just postponed the solution. And if the people didn't submit the solution for 1 hour or so, and then the first solution came, then people said, well, this must be a quite hard problem because it took the best teams 1 hour to solve. Yeah, but actually this is not a hard problem. The solution is, like the code for this solution is the shortest code from all the problems. However, so you sometimes shouldn't just really suggest yourselves just from the rank list for looking at the results in the rank list. Sometimes it might happen that there is a simple problem nobody is solving because nobody is solving it. So like nobody is solving it, so nobody attempts to solve it. On the other hand, sometimes, just one more piece of advice, it also happens from time to time in Polish competitions. There is a problem that one team just knows. Yeah, it is a hard problem, but they just solved it 2 years ago at some other competition. So they read the problem, okay, we know how to solve it, 15 minutes, accept. Then the other team say, well, this is an easy problem, let's try solving it. And they spend the 5 hours trying to solve it. This happens. So actually you also have to take into consideration that it might be also this situation, that you either can have an easy problem hidden somewhere not appearing in the rank list, and also you can have a hard problem appearing in the rank list and you might not know how to solve. Okay, so these were the 3 easiest problems. Apart from that, there were problems, one problem about sequence and one problem about hybrid that were, let's say, medium. Yeah, so in the problem about sequence, you want to check if the sequence is k even. We have a sequence of n elements. And you want to check if the sequence is k even, meaning if every contiguous fragment of the sequence has an even sum. So if I have a sequence and I have k elements, and I want to know if this has even sum, and if this does not hold for any segment, then I have to tell how many elements of the original sequence have to be changed so that the new sequence is k even. So I need to change the minimum number of elements. Minimum number of elements so that it becomes k even. And there are I see that 15 teams attempted this problem and 9 teams managed to have it accepted. So I would be, after we just say a few words, I'll be asking you maybe where's the problem? What was the reason? Maybe you had any problems with having this problem accepted. So the first, the most important observation in this problem is that if I have my sequence and if I take the first k elements, and then I move just by one element, and I take these k elements, and assuming that this part has an even sum, for this segment to have an even sum, we have to have that this element and this element have the same parity, meaning that if they are both even, then they are both even. If they are both odd, but like either they are both even or they are both odd. And then we can just move by one element, and then this segment will have the same parity as this segment. And by continuing such observations, we have that this element has to have the same parity as this element has to have the same parity as this element, and this is continuous. So we have such chains of elements which need to have the same parity. And so if they do not have the same parity, then moving from here to here changes the parity, and we have to have all the segments with even sum. So we have to have this. This is the way most of you try to solve this. And then, so we have all these chains, and if the elements in the chain have the same parity, then great, we don't have to change anything. And if the elements in any chain don't have the same parity, then there are, for instance, E even elements and O odd elements. And depending on which of these two numbers is greater, we change the, if E is at least O, then we change all odd elements to even elements, and otherwise we change all even elements to odd elements. Okay, so this is almost the solution. However, it is not the solution yet, because, well, after changing elements this way, we have obtained a sequence that is k even or k odd, because it depends on the parity of the first fragment. Maybe this was the trick that the part of the solution that you might not, that some things might have problems with. Because, well, the sample input was designed so that you don't see this problem. Yeah, so you take this first fragment, and if it is odd, then all the others will be odd, and if it is even, then all the others will be even after we do this procedure. So we have to do one small change, so that if this part is even, then okay. And if the part is odd, we have to change something. Actually, we have to just pick one of the chains and change the parity. So if it was even, we change it to odd, and if it was odd, we change it to even. We have to pick one of the chains, because it just suffices to change one element. And of course, we want to pick the chain for which it is the cheapest to do it. So we take the chain for which the difference between even and odd. So we take, so it normally requires if we have e at least as great as odd, then we have to change by changing from all even to all odd, we lose something like e minus o. So because here we have to make o changes, and here we have to make e changes. So we pick the chain for which e minus o is the minimum, and we just like the absolute value of e minus o is minimum, because it depends on whether this chain was all even or all odd, and we change this single chain to the other part, and this helps. So I'm not sure, maybe the second part was a bit tricky, and maybe there was a reason for some not accepted solutions, but I don't know. You can tell me at some point what was the reason. Yes. So this was quite a neat problem, which was actually an ad hoc problem. Really or whatever. Just no particular technique. And there was this more technical problem, like about Hydra. I would not like to talk too much about this problem. It was not that elegant actually. So you have this like giant serpent Hydra, and it has a number of heads. At the very beginning, it's just one head of type 1, and for each head, we want to destroy all heads, and for each head we have a choice. Either we take the cost zi and just slaughter the head so that it doesn't exist anymore, or we take the cost ui and we cut off the head, and by cutting off the head we obtain each I, which is new heads that grow on the neck of the Hydra after this cutting off has taken place. And we want to destroy all the heads of the Hydra as cheap as possible. Like having this cost as small as possible. Here there's a number of solutions. I'm also not really sure if all the solutions that pass the test data are correct, because we also had some issues with that in Poland. Okay, let's maybe not get into details. The main observation here, because this looks like here we have something like a graph, and we will be doing something like either BFS or Dijkstra's algorithm. It's mostly in BFS. So we just need to observe that we take all the types of heads, and for the head of type I, we have the cost of I is the cost of getting rid of a head. Getting rid of head of type I. And if we have this cost, then it is always the minimum, of course, of Zi. We either slaughter the head, or we take ui plus sum the costs over all heads in hi. So I have this simple recursive formula, and to start solving this formula, we just have to know that for the head with the smallest Zi, it is always the best choice to just slaughter the head, because whatever you do with this head, you will pay more here. If this is the Zi, is the global minimum. So you take the head with the smallest Zi, you decide, okay, so this type of head will always be slaughtered, and then you consider all the other heads and check, and again check which heads have the smallest Zi among others, and for these. And if a head, if all the other heads from one head have been analyzed, then we can just already take this head into consideration. So this is the main observations that we take the Ci for the programming. There are also a number of other solutions, but
I don't personally like this problem, so I would prefer not to get into details right now. Okay, so these were the 5 most approachable problems on yesterday's contest. And now we get to 3 that were harder, however, that you managed to solve these problems. And they are all the problems are really about some dynamic programming. In all programs, you have to design some DP algorithm, and afterwards you have to make it faster so that it runs within the dynamic. And I would like to stop for a longer while on these problems, because there is also a number of solutions to these problems, and they are all quite interesting. Maybe let's start. The easiest one was the bus trip. At least it turned out the easiest. Well, it was the easiest, maybe also as easy as vending machine. However, I consider vending machine more tricky. So this will be the just a few words about what is the problem about However, I hope that all of you managed to read it, or you had you had some time for that during the evening. So we have a grid of attractions. It could have been even n times n grid. Was it n times n grid, or was it a square grid or not? I cannot remember actually. Any of you remembers? No, it was n times n. However, yeah, whatever. n we're at most 1000. So yeah, we can assume that this is a square grid actually. And we have a number, and each field has 2 parameters corresponding to it. And these are it was WAI is the attractiveness of the field. And we have also Cij is the cost of the field, like, yeah, let's say cost. And what do we have to do? We need to plan a trip that visits a number of these attractions. And the attractiveness of these attractions has to grow on this trip. Yes, so we look for a trip. We look for a trip such that the attractiveness is increasing. Attractiveness. And among all, it contains the, and apart from that, it has to be as expensive as possible. So so it has to contain, again, because there are so many conditions in this task that I keep. Yes, so it has to have increasing attractiveness. Then it has to have the maximum cost. And the cost is counted by, first of all, summing these cost coefficients, Cij on the trip. And also it is, we count the distance between 2 consecutive attractions, and the distance is counted in the like Manhattan metric. So you have the absolute value of the differences of the coordinates. And the sum of distances when we take Manhattan metric. Yes, so we have to have, normally we look for the shortest path, here we look for the longest path, and the length of the path considers both these Cij's and these distances. Okay, and how to approach such a problem? Well, first of all, in most of, like in all the 3 problems that we will be describing right now, you have to start with several observations. You look at the problem and try to find out what are the properties of the solution. And here, there is this one nice property that you have to see. This nice property says that if we want to have increasing attractiveness and we want to have the maximum cost, it is always good to take a path that visits all the distinct attractiveness among all the points on the field. So we want to visit all distinct attractiveness values. We don't want to, because if we skip one of these, then, so for instance, if we just take visit an attraction of attractiveness 1, we skip an attraction of attractiveness 2, and then we get to attraction of attractiveness 3, then going this way would certainly have a larger cost, and if this 3 was just here, then going this way has the cost of the path can never decrease. The cost of driving, so the second cost, and the sum ofCij's will always increase because theseCij's are always positive, hopefully. If they are 0, then there is no attraction and you cannot really visit this field. So this is the first and the most important combinatorial observation. You want to visit all the distinct attractiveness values. And that's how the problem becomes more local. If having made this observation, you can see that, okay, so let's n I be the set of all attractions with attractiveness I. Attractiveness I. Maybe attractiveness, I'll just write it like that. So then we need to, and so we know that I is between 1 and 1 million, so we don't really have to care about, we can just like consider these step by step. And for each of those fields, so now I know that the path looks like, we first take some field, some attraction with attractiveness in N1, then we get something to attractiveness N2, N3, and be the maximum attractiveness. If there is no attraction of a given attractiveness, we just don't care about this and we just omit it on this one. And now we are getting to the simple dynamic programming solution. For this dynamic programming solution, for each attraction, I want to just know what is the longest path that ends at this attraction. Longest in the sense of the maximum cost. And for an attraction, so the most significant dynamic programming is that Txy be the maximum cost of a path that ends at attraction xy. And how can we compute it? Well, if we know that our path looks like this, and we know that the xy is in Ni, then we need to consider, maybe Ni plus 1, then we need to consider all AB in Ni, assuming that it is non-empty, and for each of those, try the best, so we try the best option. We take the result for all such, we take T of xy becomes the maximum of T of xy, and TAB plus distance from xy to AB, and plus, of course, the cost Cxy for visiting the attraction xy. So here we have a simple formula. This is quite a standard dynamic programming approach, and just we want to know what is the maximum cost of a path ending at a given attraction. So this way we can implement the solution. However, we won't make it in time, because here for the time complexity of such solution is actually maybe I could go here. So the time complexity is the sum of Ni times Ni plus 1 over all time. M minus 1. This is the time complexity, because for every two such layers Ni, we just take for every every attraction in ni+1, I consider all attractions in ni. So, well, if these ni's are all small, then okay, the solution is feasible. However, if you have some two consecutive ni's that are large, then this solution can actually be too small. So our goal is to transform such solution to a solution for which the time complexity is not the product, but the sum of the numbers of where ni is just the size. Yeah, I could just write the size of the respective layer so that you see that. So if we get from this complexity to this complexity, then actually we will have that the complexity will be sum of ni's plus sum of ni plus 1s, and this will be all of n times n, because both of these sums, they sum up, both of these parts sum up to n times n, because the total number of attractions is n times n. So the main question is how to get here. And so now we have a dynamic programming algorithm, and we want to make it faster. And here there is a trick that is often used when you consider, now we have to consider how the distance really look like. For now we just didn't care about Manhattan metric, there was just for any metric this solution would work, but now we have to get into how does this metric really work. And we can see that if we consider Manhattan metric and consider, for instance, this attraction, then we can divide the whole plane into 4 parts, and in each of these parts, the value, the distances, will follow the same pattern. So, for instance, consider this part of the plane, and consider an attraction here. The distance, and let's say that this attraction has coordinates, how do I denote them? X, Y, and this attraction has coordinates A. And we know that this is in the first one of these 4 parts of the plane. So if this attraction is in this part of the plane, then the distance from this attraction to this attraction is actually, we can sum up the coordinates of this attraction, subtract the coordinates, the sum of coordinates of this attraction. And because the distance from here to here is just x minus a plus y minus b, and so it's just x plus y minus a plus b. This is the distance here. And on the other hand, we know that the distances here will be growing in this order. Yes? So here are all points with distance 1, all points with distance 2, 1. Here are all points with distance 2, distance 3, and so on. So we know that the distance grows like that. So if we consider the points in this order, in the order of increasing sum of coordinates, then we know that if we consider a point here, and then we consider another point that is later in this order, then the second one will have smaller distance to this center, to this point. And we will actually, so the solution, because here the situation in all the other parts is similar, so we will actually work like that we will just implement the solution for this part, and then just do the same thing for this part, the same thing for this part, the same thing for this part. We can, for instance, rotate everything and just use the same procedure. So from now on, we only consider part 1 and points which are in part 1. So what is the formula for points which are in part 1? We are getting closer to the conclusion of the solution as we observed what we have observed. If I have this point, and I have this part 1, and I have several points here, then the result, and okay, so what am I doing right now? These points in part 1 are the points from the layer Ni. And this point is a point from the layer ni plus 1 for which I want to compute the result. So these are all points from the layer ni that fit within this part of the plane. And so now the result for this point, considering only, we'll consider first of all this part, and we'll consider all the three remaining parts. And after we consider all the three remaining parts, we'll take just the maximum out of all these four, and this will be the result for this point. So as we are considering only this one-fourth of the solution, the result is that if you have, so the result for ni, this is point xy, is the maximum over all AB in this part of the plane of x plus y minus a plus b. This is what we have observed here. And plus t of AB, and of course plus, maybe I'll remove this part also, and of course plus c x y. So we take the first. And here we have this very nice property that we can divide this formula into two parts. One part is completely dependent only on this point xy, and the other part is dependent only on this point AB. So we have x plus y plus the costs of the point xy, and we subtract maximum over all ABs, which are in part 1 of the value TAB minus A minus B. And this is actually great news for us, because what we will store, we will just be visiting all the points of the plane in the order of increasing sum of coordinates. And what we actually only need to store is such value. We want, as we analyze all the points of the plane just in this order, this is how the algorithm will be working. And whenever we visit a point from ni, we just compute this value, TAB minus A minus B, and if it is, this is plus, of course. This is plus. And if it is, if the value for TAB minus A minus B of this point is greater than the all values that have already been considered, we just update the global maximum. So we just, what we do in our solution, we just store the global maximum. Maybe let's denote it again by m. Yes, so we store m, which is this maximum, and whenever we encounter a point from ni, we just update this global maximum. And whenever we encounter a point from ni plus 1, we just check, we compute the value as this sum, which only depends on this point, and m, which is the current maximum. Yes, but you might see something going not really good, something going wrong a bit in this solution. At least the people who maybe attempted to solve this problem. The problem is that we only consider part 1 of the plane. And if we consider points in this order, we might encounter a situation, because you would like to compute this formula only for the points which are in this part of the plane. However, if we consider the points in the order of increasing sum of coordinates, we might, for instance, on the way visit a point that is here, and this point from ni. Yes, so maybe I'll just draw another picture, because it is important to see this one catch in the solution. So maybe let the black ones denote the nodes from ni, the points from ni, and the blue ones denote the points from ni plus 1. So I may be considering this number of points. This is the order in which we consider the points, and here are some other points. And for instance, assume that here is, okay, so I want to compute the value for this point. Then what I would do, I would take this part of the plane, and I would like to find the maximum of such values for all the points here. However, on the way, I will also consider this point, which is out outside of this part of the plane. So it actually, the solution is not correct because it takes into consideration a point which is not in this part of the plane. This is like looks there's something wrong going on here because we take a point outside of the range from where, because we only prove that this nice property of the formula holds in this part of the plane, and here we have a point that is outside. So one of the ways to tackle this problem is just to have some data structure which only stores, which enables finding in the part of the plane what is the maximum of the values TAB minus A minus B over all points which are located in such part of the plane. But as you can imagine, this solution is not very easy to implement. There are some crazy data structures going on. Yes?
Are we still iterating over all the points in that section for each point in I+1 set? Like up to now, we didn't say how to change the complexity.
No, we store the maximum.
Well, but the maximum changes when you change the point from that one to another one, then you have more points on your set or maybe less points. So you have to iterate clever.
So the main idea was just to store the current maximum of all points in Ni that we have already considered. We have considered a number of points in the layer Ni, and for all the considered points, we store the maximum.
Yeah, let's say now that's only one point in the set Ni+1, right?
Yes?
Let's say now we consider the second point.
This one?
Or for example, yeah.
Yeah, but we are considering everything in the order of increasing coordinates, sum of coordinates. So maybe I should repeat this one more. So we consider the points in the order of increasing sum of coordinates, and we consider both the points from Ni and the points from Ni+1 in this order.
Okay, so let's consider one that is on the same diagonal, but a bit lower. Here, for example, yeah.
Yes.
So the point, because you are considering the circle up from that line, no, the one.
Yes? No, this one.
That one is the one you're considering now, and that one you shouldn't be considering.
Yes.
And up to now we didn't do anything.
Yes. And this is the problem we are talking about right now.
Okay.
So one of the solutions, as I mentioned just a moment ago, because the answer to your question is quite funny, but I need to get to it just in a moment. Because one of the ideas was that we consider all these points in this order, and then we have this point out, need to find out what is the maximum of all points in this part of the plane. And it is quite hard actually to do it, because I need to know the maximum of such values among all points. So the solution, the best solution to this problem is just don't care about this problem. So just take the maximum over all points that were already considered. Just don't care. Yes? So if this point is outside of the range, don't care. Take it into the maximum also. Just don't care. Why is it so? Because here, the result from this point that we will have, because it is outside of the range, can only be lower than the actual impact of this point. And the actual impact will be computed when we take into consideration this part, but this will be another part of the solution. Yeah, I had to explain in this way and put you in this catch because otherwise you will get this problem. So the total solution is now the following. Yeah? Solution. Consider all points from Ni sum Ni+1 in the order of increasing, non-decreasing x plus y. And for each point A, B in Ni, update M equals maximum M, and this part, this formula TAB minus A minus B. While for each point xy, is the maximum txy. Well, initially all these values are minus infinity or whatever. And plus x maximum this and this formula. So we have x plus y plus the cost of this point and plus the maximum n. And this is the whole solution. We consider all the points and we store the maximum impact given by the points from the layer ni. And whenever we encounter a point from the layer ni plus 1, we just compute the maximum and we take the maximum n over all points from the layer ni that were already considered. Once again, this can be done because if we have a point that is outside of the considered range, it doesn't matter because the result computed here will be the part of the formula given by this point will still be smaller. So if we take it the distance this way, we have this, maybe I will draw it in red. So as we are considering this way, this will be the influence of this point. However, if we then consider in this way the plane, then the distance here will be larger, so the point will be considered with the right, will give the right factor to this maximum. But it will be done in just the other part of the solution. This is actually quite tricky, and at least at our local contest, almost no one thought about this, and they just implemented this funny data structure that would extract maximum over all points in this range of the plane, and so on. It wasn't really a nice implementation. I don't know about the teams who solved this problem. Did you solve it anyhow similar?
I use a start response for AI, and I get only a maximum 9 points that can be part of the solution.
And you take the maximum out of this.
But in that solution, we really need to order the NI and NI as well. Because if we don't care if the point is in the area, we can take the maximum in the NI before taking the NI before. And get the 4 maximums, and with these 4 maximums, we need with the natural one without any order.
Actually, as you tell this idea, you might be right.
What did you say?
Yeah, so I will say, so the idea is because here we just consider all the points in this funny order. And the other idea would be just to first compute the maximum over all points from Ni. Just don't care about the order. Just let's compute first the maximum of such values over all points of Ni. And then for each point in Ni plus 1, update it with this maximum in any order. Because actually, the same argument seems to apply, because if we have a point that is already on this part of the plane, then even this value will be even smaller for this, because then the subtraction here, like subtracting a minus a and minus b, will get below 0, because a plus b will be smaller than x plus y. So this will give even a smaller, this will be even smaller, and then we would consider the problem with the right factor when you, for instance, computing that layer. Actually, this is the first time someone tells me this idea, and it seems correct. So we could just don't care about the order of considering these points, and just first do this, step 1, and then step 2, just do this, and that's all. Not bad. Nice idea. Actually, no one, at our regional contest, no one invented anything like this. Okay? Everything.
One question.
Yes.
Then we have to do the same 4 times.
Yeah, do it 4 times. This way, and this way. So for the here we consider the sum of, so considering this direction, like you either consider first, so this direction is just we sort the points by x plus y. Here we sort the points by minus x minus y. Here we sort the points by x minus y, and here we sort the points by y minus x or something like that. So we just update the formulas here accordingly. Here we have we just set the different value of the difference. Well, you can actually do like think if it's simpler, you can just design a solution only for this order, and then just 4 times you can rotate everything. Rotate everything, and then just repeat the same solution 4 times, not just rotating the whole rectangle, the whole grid. Is it more or less clear? Okay, yeah. So the problem like turned out even more tricky than I thought. It's a bit surprising. Okay, so now maybe let's come back to more standard problems. I thought that this one was more standard and it was more tricky. And now the 2 most important problems that I'd like to talk about is the problem about vending machine and the problem about rabbits. Maybe let's start with vending machine because for this problem we had more accepted solutions. And just coming back for a second to the previous problem, there is one nice observation about the way one can solve problems that we can learn from today's lesson. Namely, you have to decide when to stop thinking and start coding. Because sometimes you get the first solution. Okay, we have the solution like that. Then we only need a data structure to like extract the maximum of the value of points in a part of the plane. And since we know the data structure, we can implement it like a bonus of 100 lines of code, and we can just do it. But if you think for 5 more minutes, you can come up with this model solution that like I described in the very beginning. And this is when we stop thinking. However, you continue thinking and you notice that, well, you can even get rid of all this stuff and just write it like that. So you can even get a simpler solution. So it is often not the case that when you like get the first idea of a solution and you know that it will run, but you see this so complicated, maybe sometimes it is better to continue thinking, continue like analyzing the problem. Maybe you can like simplify it by a lot. So this is also a nice piece of advice. But there's some people just use it very Okay, so coming back to vending machine. Here the main number in this problem is the number 40. Everything is not greater than 40. We have at most 40 snacks. And at most 40 kinds of snacks. For each of these snacks, I will just take the notation from the original problem statement. We have Li at most 40 for all I equals 1 up to n. These are quantities. I know how many of these snacks are there. And we have some of them, which is at most 40, which are costs of the snacks. And we have a given amount of money, which is at most 64,000 amount of money. And I want to buy as many, I want to buy the snacks with the largest value possible using this amount of money. So I want to buy as many, not as many snacks as possible, but as as expensive snacks as possible. But there is one trick in the problem statement. Of course, this would be just a simple knapsack problem. In this problem statement, we have this strange property that when we buy a snack of type I, we get additionally, because the vending machine is broken, we get additionally 1 snack of each of the types from I minus 1. So buying a snack, this is the start solution. buying a snack of type I, we get one snack of each of the types from 1 to I minus 1. And the goal is to maximize the value of the snacks we could buy. And it is quite important to see two limitations of this condition star. The first limitation is that if we want to use this trick, there has to be at least one snack of the type I so that we can actually buy it. And the other trick is that if there is a snack, if some of these types of snack, there are no more snacks of this type, then there is just no use. We get just no snack of this type. Okay, so if there are types with snacks missing, we don't get these snacks, and if there is no snack of type I, you cannot use this operation star. Yes, this is for all I. For all I. This is how it's done. So this problem looks like dynamic programming, and it is dynamic programming. So it's not always the case, but here it just, you see it from the very beginning. But the most important question is how to write this dynamic programming. And for this problem, it is a quite nice idea to first obtain a solution that is incorrect. Because then, from this solution that is incorrect, you can get to a solution that is correct, and actually it will be easier. So we can make an assumption that we could be buying the snacks from right to left. So from the largest I to the smallest. And we have some solution. In this solution, we buy several snacks. We obtain, from this condition star, we obtain many more snacks. But we can consider which snacks do we actually buy. And we can make an assumption. Maybe just make it conjectural. This is better. One can buy snacks from right to left in the order from right to left. Yes, so I can just keep considering the snacks from right to left, and for each kind of snack, so as we consider some, so we have all the snacks from 1 to n, 1 to up to n, and we consider some part up to snack type I. And what do we do? After we consider all this, we store in an array I, for instance j, and make it, we have all these denotations, make it m maybe. M, which would be the total value of snacks that we already have. And what are these parameters? After we consider snacks of types from I to n, after we consider snacks of types I to n, assuming that we already bought j snacks, like explicitly paid for them, assuming that we bought j snacks, and that we paid for them exactly m amount of money, and that we paid for the m units of money, whatever are the units of money, by dollars of money. So we consider from right to left. And I always, as you might notice, when we consider dynamic programming solutions, the most important part I consider is to write what is the name, what states do we actually consider in this dynamic programming. So we just explicitly write the name of the table, some parameters on the table, and I always explain what are the, what I'm actually trying to compute in this table. And from there, if we really know what we want to compute in a dynamic programming solution, it is much easier to design the actual algorithm. So I always consider it like that. And now, under this conjecture that we have, the solution is quite simple. Assuming that we have considered everything for, we have Ti star, Ti plus 1 star, and whatever. Yes, we have everything computed up to, from I up to n. And now we want to compute what is Ti minus 1 of some values Jm. So we consider, so we just, or maybe it is even easier. Okay, so we want to, because in the dynamic programming solution you can either start from Ti and compute Ti minus 1, or you can want to compute to compute Ti minus 1 using the values of Ti. So maybe here it is easier to, from Ti, if I know the value of Ti Jm, and now I consider snacks of type I minus 1. I know that I have already bought J snacks, so J out of L I minus 1 snacks of type I minus 1 are already bought thanks to the condition star. And the condition star guarantees that if we already bought J snacks somewhere after the snack type I minus 1, then if we consider snacks type of type I minus 1, we have J snacks already here, and if Li, so now if Li minus 1 is greater than J, then we can consider buying any of these additional snacks of type I minus 1. Yeah, we can, and if we consider buying, then we increase J. If we try to, so then consider buying from 0 to Lj minus 1, Li minus 1 minus J snacks of type I minus 1. So if you want to compute it, so this way you just have, here you just make the number of steps, that is the difference between Li minus 1 and J. And for each of those snacks, if you consider buying X of these snacks, so consider if you buy X snacks, then the formula is you get to Ti minus 1, you get J plus X, and you get M plus X times the cost of Ci. This is the state that you get from here if you decide to buy this number of snacks. So this is actually a complete dynamic, so we know the transitions in the dynamic programming solution, we know the states, we are done, more or less done, even less done than more. And what are the problems here? The first problem is that the conjecture doesn't hold. It's quite sad, but it's the problem. The other problem is the complexity of the solution. So we have two problems to tackle. So first, what is the complexity of this solution? So the number of states is I is between 1 and n, j is between also 1 and n is between 0 and k, and it takes us, well, we have to consider a number of snacks of type I minus 1, so this is between 1 and the li. Actually, since everything here is at most 40, then we can just write n here. Well, here it's actually up to maximum of li's. However, everything is bounded by 40, so this is just 40. Yes, so in this solution we get 40 to the power 40 cubed times 64 million. Well, this is greater than 10 to the power of 9, so you have the time number to 9. So we have to somehow squeeze the time numbers. But the major problem is that this solution doesn't work, actually. It is slow, it doesn't work. So why do we consider it? It doesn't work because I don't know if any of you already found a counterexample for such a solution. Yes.
And 3, T2, 7, 1, 1.
What now?
M equals 3.
3. Yes.
K equals 2.
Yes.
7, 1, 1.
These are costs or quantities?
Costs.
Costs.
2, 1, 1.
2, 1, 1. This is quantity. Okay, so the solution, this way, we buy this snack, and then we cannot buy this snack because the quantities here. So we buy a snack of this type. Now we have no more snacks to buy of this type. So if buying in this order, we get just the cost 9. And if we bought from left to right, we could buy first this type of snack, and then we get one snack of this type, one additional snack of this type, and then we take one snack of this type, and we get one additional snack of this type. So if we buy right to left, we get 9, and if we buy left to right, we get 7, 14, 16. So this is that. Yeah, the problem is here, we actually, since we bought this snack, we kind of have less options at considering snack of type 2, because we don't just cannot buy it because we have already bought one type of snack. Okay, so now the main observation is that we are wrong, but we are not far from being right. To be right, we just have to buy not from right to left, not from left to right. Because if we buy from left to right, we will never encounter a situation that we want to buy a snack and we cannot really buy it because we have already bought something that was to the right, because we buy from left to right. So there's nothing to the right. So the main point is this. So this conjecture is false, but the conjecture that is true is just buy from left to right. The solution is correct. The question is whether, if we take this conjecture that actually holds, the question is whether we can somehow update this solution. And yes, we can update this solution. We will store exactly the same table where J, B will be the number of types of snacks that will be bought afterwards. But at this very moment, we actually don't have to care about the snack. We know how many snacks will be bought in the future, so we know that J out of Li-1 snacks of type I-1 could be bought. But we don't have to buy them by using the snacks of the future types. We can either buy them explicitly or let them be bought by any of these J free buyings that use the condition star. So the solution, so the table looks just the same, nothing changes. And the thing that changes in the solution, I will mark it in red. We don't have to make this assumption, and we consider buying from 0 to Li-1 snacks of type I-1. And if we buy this number of snacks, this increases, and here so here we have to update this part of the table, because if we bought X snacks of type I-1 explicitly, and apart from that, we can buy Li-1. Now here we have to have a nice formula. At most, minimum, we can buy at most J, and at most, of course, Li-1 minus X. Snacks of type Ci-1, which we get just for free because of having bought J snacks in the future. So we know that we will buy J snacks in the future. However, we don't really care about this at this moment. We can use them in this. We can use them, however, we can even ignore them, so this value X can be as large as possible. We just, we know the future and we can manipulate the future. This is how this solution actually works. I think for some people it might be more intuitive to actually consider the snacks from left to right. and so not consider for decreasing I but increasing I, and then just have this j. The j denotes what will be the future. So I'm considering this very point in time, and I know what will be the future.
So you always update the third field with m plus the largest amount times the cost, right?
And no, but here we have mean. We can take at most j from the future, and at most this number, which is so. If j is very small, then I don't really take li minus 1 times ci minus 1. Or maybe I don't get the question.
Come on.
Okay, so here maybe just the formula again. So I take what I have already bought. I take the explicitly bought x snacks of type I minus 1, and additionally I could take j times ci minus 1 because of having bought j in future, j types of snacks in the future. However, I cannot do that because I might not have j snacks already, so I have to take minimum of j and the number of snacks that I still have after having bought x snacks of type I minus 1. So this is the new value here. So this doesn't necessarily sum up to li minus 1, because if j is smaller, then we cannot. If j is large enough, we can just buy all the snacks of type I minus 1, and if j is not large enough, then we can buy at most j snacks of this type. So this is actually somewhat mind-bending part of the solution, because like we have to see that like knowing the future, we know the future, but we don't really need to take it into consideration at this point. Yeah, since we know we will be buying from left to right. So the time complexity of the solution doesn't change. However, the correctness changes now the solution is correct, because well, we can always buy the snacks from left to right. No snack will be missing because of that. But there is this one sad part, the complexity. It is still too slow. And there are two ways to go from here. One is, again, applying some very difficult techniques. Well, sometimes in dynamic programming, you can, for instance, here for each state, we have a linear number of transitions. We have at most n transitions. You could somehow try to manipulate the structure of the states so that you have a constant number of transitions from each state. However, I guess you don't want to do it, because you have a three-dimensional array, and you would like to manipulate it somehow that you know that you get the right so here from a state.
That is just for some state going to the right snap instead of going to every other snap. I mean, for some state you have the case where you buy the snap and go to the next one, or you don't buy and go to the next one. But it's only one snap you will form instead of 10.
Yes, but don't you introduce additional states because of that? Or maybe not. Maybe not. No. Okay. Possibly this technique can be done in a simpler way. So let me just say what are my transitions, and one way to go is just have a state and have a constant number of transitions. Well, potentially what you're saying might be right. Yeah, that you can buy just snacks one by one. This is the idea.
I actually did the incorrect solution that way, and it worked. So I guess it would work in the correct one. I mean, the solution that goes right to left, and it works in O1 transition from each state.
Okay.
So I guess the other would.
I see.
But I think the problem is it would still be in this way too much memory. So if it was 128.
Yes. So we need to get the right trick. So it seems you know the right trick as you are saying this. The right trick is just the problem is cheating on us. Someone is trying to cheat us. The problem setter. Let us come back to the very beginning and let us see what is the amount of money actually here. The amount of money here is actually the product of everything here. Yeah? We multiply this is 40 to the 40 cube, because you take all the products. There are at most 40 types of products. For each type of product, you have at most 40 of it, so you have at most 1,600 unit products, and for each of them, the cost is at most 40. So this value of k looks reasonable, but this is not reasonable. You can buy all snacks in the vending machine much cheaper. If you just consider, so now this is the D trick. Some people can just invent this trick in no time, and for some people it takes hours to just see it. If you have some, maybe okay, I know how to draw it in a simple way. Consider snacks of type 1, 2 up to type 10. And see, these are the snacks of type 1, these are the snacks of type 2, this is n minus 1, this is n, these are the snacks of type n minus 1, and these are the snacks of type n. They are just the unit snacks of each type. And now consider the last 40 snacks. Just 40 unit snacks. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and so on up to 40. This will be the last 40 snacks. If we buy all these snacks from left to right, we will buy all the snacks in the vending machine. Because from here we will have 40, like for each type, that after having bought all these, we can buy all the snacks of each of the previously considered types just for nothing, because we can use the condition snack. So we just buy the last 40 snacks, and we have everything. So this concludes that we can actually limit k not by 40 to the power 40 cube, but by 40 snacks of cost at most 40. So it is 1,060. Because having got from 40 snacks here, we can buy all the snacks in the machine. So actually the whole solution is okay. The whole complexity analysis is okay, but the maximum value of k can be decreased by a lot. So now a solution with time complexity n to the n cube times k works in time. We get, like, let's make it like that, 40 to the power of f, and this is a reasonable value and it fits. And we have memory complexity 40 to the 4th power. So it's also reasonable, it is the most convenient operation. Just slightly more than one operation. So this problem actually illustrates like different ideas in dynamic programming. One of the ideas that's quite funny is that sometimes coming up with an incorrect solution, let us, if we see that the solution is incorrect, maybe by submitting it, but maybe by analyzing it by hand, then we can somehow update the solution so that it becomes correct. And it is easier to invent the solution. Here it was easier to invent the solution just by going through the incorrect one, because otherwise you would have to think, okay, so we will buy this number of snacks in future and something, and it's not really convenient to think like that. And on the other hand, there is this funny observation that's not really typical in such problems. And the third one that I would really like to mention, so just today is really dynamic programming stuff, would be the problem about rabbits. I see just one team solve the problem, which is this team, if I can see the first one. Okay. So the problem about rabbits. So in the problem about rabbits, let me find where rabbits. Yes. So here there will also be a number of nice tricks in the solution, so that here we can start with a less complicated theme than the one that is present in the problem statement, and then just keep adding all the additional conditions until we get the right solution. So here we have at most 2,000 beds of lettuce, and each bed holds a number of rabbits. Whatever, guess, AI, number of rabbits. And the first complication is that these beds lie on a circle. So we have one bed. This is how the beds we allocated. So we have A1, A2, A4, A5, A6. And we want to, well, the problem statement wasn't that drastic, so we want to get rid of the rabbits somehow, and we have a shotgun for that. And we do it, and if we shoot at all rabbits at one of the beds, then all these rabbits disappear. And the remaining rabbits from the adjacent beds jump one bed just after the position when they were located. So these rabbits disappear, and these rabbits jump one bed forward. And we have at most k such shots, k number of shots, and we want to get rid of the maximum number of rabbits. Okay, so this is the problem statement, and here for such problems, I hope you are. If you tried to solve any such kind of problem previously, you might know that the first basic idea of how to start solving it is to get rid of the circle stuff. You want everything to be located on a line first. Maybe then there will be some additional complication to get it on the circle. However, you start with a line. So I will not only describe the solution, but how to get to the solution. So first assume that everything is on a line. We have no circle. And now, another thing when you try tackling such a problem is to consider some boundary conditions. One of the boundary conditions is, for instance, how many shots do I need to get rid of all the rabbits for such a line? How can it look like? If I have a line, and how many shots do I actually need? Draw a particular line. Okay, so what can I do, for instance? Well, if I have a line, I have to shoot at this point, because otherwise, if I shoot only at this point, then these rabbits would like to stay at their position and nothing really happens to them. So I have to shoot here so that rabbits from this position vanish. This causes these rabbits to jump one bed forward. Okay, so I get rid of those rabbits here. Then these rabbits jump one bed forward, and that's how I can get rid of all the rabbits from a line using. So if there are m positions, then I have m divided by 2 ceiling shots to destroy them. If m for an even case, it is more complicated. I have to shoot here, then I have to shoot here, and still I have rabbits here, so I have to have. So here I have m up plus 1 shots to get rid of them. Okay, so there are no proofs yet, but we have some intuition. We're just seeing, like, you cannot really have a smaller number of shots. You can just see it. Most of the observations you can first have just make them in an informal way and then try to prove them somehow. So we see that a common theme of shooting to the rabbits is to shoot at every second bed. You don't really want to shoot at 2 consecutive beds. And this is how the solution will really proceed. So we have an observation, let's say. It is written like that because we don't really have a proof yet, but we don't want to shoot at 2 consecutive beds. So this is observation 1. see this special case, we see that shooting at those rabbits, it actually pays off to just shoot at these rabbits in the order from left to right. So if we take a different order of shooting, we don't really get any value from here. In this solution, we just shoot from left to right, and so the order of shooting here is from left to right. We might, just by experimenting a bit with some sample data, we might just get an impression that this is the way to go for the general solution. So this is again observation 2. But it's still no proof at all, but well, we can get the intuition. Shoot from left to right. And having made such two observations, which are more guesses than observations, we can actually design a solution. Well, we can actually design two different solutions. We can have two different ways to go. Both of these will be, of course, dynamic programming ones. Let me just follow some notation. So one type of dynamic programming solution is we considered rabbits from the beds from 1 up to I. We made j shots, so this will be t of I j. We have made j shots, and additionally we have to know when was the last shot. So the last shot was at position L. L stands for last. So this is a nice way to go in a dynamic programming solution. We can just store all the information that is we have made. We have considered this number of beds, we have this number of shots, and the last shot was at position L. Some other way to go is to have, on the other hand, we can either store the last, where was the last shot, or we can just assume that the last shot was at very position I. So so we can have t prime I j, where we consider from A1 up to AI, and we made j shots. The last one at position I. Okay, so here we have more parameters, like 3 dimensions in the table, and here we have just 2 dimensions. But both of the solutions are actually, so now we know how the array really looks like, and now just producing transitions from these states is a matter just of a few minutes of thinking. So here the number of states is n times the number of shots times the last shot, and here the dimension is the number of beds times the number of shots. However, here, so now if you want to compute, let's just take a short look at both of these types of solutions. In the first case, how do we make transitions? If we are in state I, J, L, and we want to step forward, then we either step forward to, we take the I plus 1 bed, we can make a shot at this bed, and then the last one will be J plus 1, or we can not make a shot, the last one will stay L, and the costs depend on actually if there was a shot. So here the cost is just like the cost is just the same. So here we gain no additional number of rabbits, and here the additional number of rabbits depends actually on L. What was L? So if L was equal, so here maybe I'll pick another different color. If L was equal to I, then we do not perform this. observation 1, if L was equal to I minus 1, we get the profit of AI plus 1, because thanks to the shot at position I minus 1, the rabbits from position I jump to the position I plus 1. And if L is less than I minus 1, then we get just AI plus 1 rabbits. And here we get 0, because we get 0 additional. So here the transitions are, there is a constant number of transitions, but the number of states is larger. On the other hand, in the second solution, if we know that we have made J shots and the last shot was at position I, so here actually, here we have to make the transitions in the other way to explain it. So if we want to get to position I and the last shot is made here, we have to consider that the previous shot was made at position I minus 1, or the previous shot was made at position I minus 2, and so at position 1, or whatever. Maybe let's just draw 3 dot figures. I minus 3, J minus 1. And so we just have to check at what position was the previous shot made. So here we have n times k states, but we have n transitions. So basically both of these solutions yield n squared times k complexity. So if we take a look at the limits in the problem statement, both of these solutions are to solve. And just remember, they solve a different problem, because we don't consider the circle yet. We just consider a line, and still we have no proofs. So we are somewhere in the middle of number, but it's not that bad as you might think. Okay, so first of all, the one trick that I would like to show, in both of these solutions we can decrease the time complexity. We can divide it by a factor of n. And we do it we use 2 different techniques for that. For the first solution, if we have such a big array, as you might have noticed in these transitions, we only have 3 basic options. Either if the last position is I minus 1, or it is smaller than I minus 1. So here we can only consider the values L, either I or I minus 1, or I minus 2, which is exactly the same as minus infinity. If the last shot was at position I minus 2 or earlier, this last shot doesn't really have any implication on what will be the shot at position I plus 1 and or further. So here we have just 3 options, because all the previous shots are exactly the same for us. So this just enables this dimension to drop to only 3 positions, only 3 values, and we just decrease the size of the array by n. On the other hand, here to compute all these transitions, we can use the same trick as one of we just mentioned previously. We can just store such partial sums or partial maximum values for the increasing transitions, so that we don't really have to consider all this number of transitions. We just can get the impact from all these transitions up to this position, up to this position, up to this position, and then here you have just a constant number of steps. So here you can decrease the number of transitions to all of 1. However, it is a bit less elegant, so maybe I prefer this solution. But both of these solutions in both of the solutions you can drop the square factor and square factor. Just drop it to linear. So now it seems that we have both solutions at least running in time. However, we have still the problem that there's this circle, and we have to somehow manage the circle. And we will do it. The thing is that you always, in such problems, you want to somehow cut the circle. Cut the circle at position 1, and then just compute it as if it was a line. And the only thing that actually can make us worry is what happens. So we want to cut, maybe I'll take the red one again. We want to cut at this position. So like to create a line and then just solve the problem this way. So the main basic observation is that if we know what kinds of shots were performed at positions 1 and 2, then this is the sole information that is important for us when considering all the following positions. Because if we consider the last position, the position AN, the only shots that really matter for us from the beginning of the circle are just those two shots. If there was a shot at positions A3, then neither any rapids disappear from that, nor any rapids jump to the position 6. So we have to augment this solution by two new. So for instance, maybe we'll just consider from now this type of solution. Also this type of solution can be augmented in this case. So we consider all the dimensions that are already there, and we can have two additional Boolean flags, which say S1 and S2, and these are just Boolean flags that say S1, was there a shot at position I, and S2, was there a shot at position no, this is I1, and was there a shot at position 2. These are the questions. So this is how we just, when performing the first two shots, we set these two flags, and then we consider the shots from left to right, and we just remember these two parameters, and when we are getting closer to Bell's number n-1 and n, we just have to additionally consider what happens at the touching of these first two beds and the last beds. So here are some conditions that you have to just take care of. You see there's just a constant number of conditions you consider. The first one, so the only interaction comes between 1 and 2 and n-1 and n. Here. This is the only interaction on the circle. So you can actually cut the circle and just remember this. So we have just multiplied the size of the array by 4 and nothing seriously changes. Okay. And now just a sketch of some proofs, because for now we have made some observations and nothing actually was proved here. The sketch can be done like that. The main, you can ask yourself one basic question, which actually, after asking yourself this question, you can actually prove everything in a simple manner. The question is, what are the rabbits that eventually we get rid of in our solution? So we denote by R a subset of all the beds, which denotes from which beds the rabbits, let's say, disappear in our solution. Note that R isn't S, where S is the where do we shoot. Yes, R may not be equal to S. So we also get rid of rabbits not at positions where we explicitly shoot. Yes. So then the profit of our solution is the sum over all I in R of AI. This is the profit of solution. And now all we have to do, we won't be doing this in very detail. This is just a nice thing to reconsider, for you to reconsider afterwards, is to see what is the structure of the set R. Well, the set R, you just have to prove that if you are on a circle, then the set R is composed of a number of intervals for each interval to be of odd length, so containing an odd number of bits. And if you consider the set R like this, then from the same argument that showed why n half shots, roughly n half shots are sufficient to get rid of all rabbits, we see that if you have this odd fragment, then the best way of getting rid of all the rabbits is just like that. So now you know that the shots are just performed in this way. If this is normal. Well, also it could be that if R is equal to just 1n, then you have a special case. And the special case we have already considered. Well, we consider them a line here. So we can just actually, if we consider all these contiguous fragments, then we get that for none of these fragments you can actually remove all the rabbits cheaper than just shooting by every second attack. However, proving such observations isn't really necessary during the competition. If you are just perfectly sure about them, you can just write a solution and give it a try. It is good to convince yourself why the solution really works. However, afterwards there was just quite a lot of technical engineering stuff with dynamic programming. And it was common to 3 of the problems that we have just described right now. Okay, so this is the point where I would like to cut the description of solutions of today's contest. Maybe at the very end of today, or maybe somewhere later, I would go back to the 3 most difficult ones, but they were very technical ones. For instance, this problem about evaluation of expressions, there was at least 200 lines of code, so it was just like a killer problem. So just to make sure that nobody ends before 5 hours. Or before 10 hours, or whatever. We sometimes get just very hard problems just to make sure. And now, as we are into dynamic programming and into some puzzles, I would like to give another example that's actually so something a bit different also from dynamic programming, and this will just give us the time to end today's class. So we change the subject. So you can wake up the people who just lost in all these arrays of multiple dimensions. Now there will be something completely different. Oh, so maybe I'll just remove everything here and so that. Something new. Something, I'm not sure if you ever saw such a puzzle, but maybe you saw it or not. This would be a kind of a guessing game. Here we have 2 players, Alice and Bob. And we consider all numbers from the range from 1 up to 10. The initial range. And what we want to do is that Bob thinks of a number. So Bob just chooses a number x in this range. And what Alice does, she wants to know what is the value of x. And she can actually guess the value by asking Bob questions on the form. Asks questions on the form. Is x not greater than a? For some given value of a. So she can just ask such questions to Bob, and Bob promises to answer the questions. And we want to go, as you can guess, find x in the minimum number of questions. This is the goal. Well, this problem doesn't seem so difficult, does it? Maybe there might be some idea of how to be searching for x in this solution. Anyone of you has a basic idea of how to try to search for x? Binary search. This is exactly the binary search problem. You want to find x, so you ask at the very middle of the range. You check if x is on either side of the menu, and then just continue searching on a shorter range. So the solution here is binary search. Here one also has to think of what is the, like, we have to specify the goal a bit more, because what is the minimum number of questions? We want to have the minimum number of questions in the pessimistic case, in the worst case. Yes, we don't care about the solution that for half of the possible values of x just requires a constant number of questions, and for the other values of x it requires n questions. Yeah? So we want to match in worst case scenario. This is what we have to specify. And if we specify that this is our goal, then binary search is a perfect solution. You can try to prove it if you really don't believe that binary search is so optimal, but it is so optimal. It just requires log n base to logarithm of n questions. So it is not really that exciting. But we can get a bit more exciting if we introduce some new behavior to Bob. Namely, Bob could lie when answering the questions. What if Bob lies? Yes. Well, if Bob can lie just answering any question, then Alice will never get any answer during the she cannot really get anything out of Bob. So the question is, but maybe let's limit the number of lies that Bob can perform. So this is not really a good question. What if Bob could lie, well, let's say, at most once? So we can answer one question not truthfully. You can say yes when it's no, or say no when it is yes. And the question is, what is the optimal strategy for Alice? How can she ask questions so that the number of questions is optimal? I'm not sure if anyone of you ever saw this kind of. Oh, no, okay, so that's good. And it's also not very popular in Poland, but we try to popular it. Okay. So one application would be, okay, so we have binary search. Let's just make use of binary search again. Yes, we can ask at the very half of the interval and say, is x less than or equal to n and half, or is it really? And after such question, what do we know? Well, we know actually nothing. Because if Bob lied, then x. So if Bob first answers yes, then if Bob lied, then x would be here, and if Bob says truthfully, x would be here. So we know just absolutely nothing about x. Okay, so let's ask again. Is x at most n half? And now if Bob answers again yes, then we know that both of these answers were truthful, and we can limit ourselves to this range. And if Bob answered no, then we know that Bob lied. That's so bad. However, if we know that Bob lied, which is the correct answer, this one or this one? We don't know. We ask again. So in this case, we ask again, is x at most n half? And afterwards, we know the correct answer, and here we also know that Bob cannot lie anymore. So here we just continue binary search. Just normal. Continue standard binary search. Okay. And here we continue our algorithm, but we just have the range from 1 to n. Okay, so how many questions can we have here in the worst case? 2 log n, yes. We have 2 log n and plus 1, because here we have this one additional question which, well, it might just be necessary in the very last moment when just Bob, if Bob lies at the very last moment, then we have to have the first question to know what is the true false. Okay, but the question is it the best possible way to answer questions, to ask questions? And well, you might guess that it's like, I don't know what your intuition says, but my intuition says that if we were to have just the exact minimum number of questions asked, then this doesn't really need to be the exact. You could have a smaller number of questions possible. This is a nice exercise. I guess it will take us quite time, but just for you, if you want to convince yourselves, show that for n equals 5, this is not optimal. So even if n equals 5, yeah, here you have our strategy gives 7 questions. This strategy, and one would have at most 6 questions. The optimal strategy. Maybe I'll switch to coding. So this is, and we want to know precisely the minimum number of questions. On the other hand, we don't really care about the complexity so much, meaning I never really said how large is n. Well, here we can assume for a moment n is at most, I don't know, 500. So we really care about the optimal number of questions, and we don't, well, the complexity can be larger. Well, for binary search, the complexity is extreme, the solution is extremely fast, and for here, it might not be as fast, but we don't really have the optimal solution. So maybe let us come back to the very first, how to obtain such a solution, how to really start tackling such a problem, because it's some kind of riddle. How to really tackle such a riddle. And I would like to just introduce a few nice techniques to tackle such kind of riddles. And the first thing is, let's come back to the very first question. So we have this range from 1 to n, and Alice asks, assume that the first question is x at most a for something? And what we can get 2 types of answers, yes or no. Yes or no. These are 2 types of answers. But the question, okay, so after we get an answer yes, do we know anything about x? No. If x is smaller than a, then this was a true answer. But if x is larger than a, then just Bob lied, and x could also be larger than a. Similar situation. So after both of these answers, we know absolutely nothing about the value of x. So one would say that, well, one would even claim that the solution is impossible because we ask a question and we still know nothing. So what's the point in asking questions? But there is something that we know. And what is the complete information, the state of knowledge that we have after getting the answer yes, for instance, for this question? What is the complete state of knowledge? What do we know?
You can lie or set the truth.
Yes. So we actually know nothing about x, but we know something about the number of lies of what, depending on the value of x. So for the values from 1 up to 8, for the values from A to 1 up to n, we know that already Bob have made one line if he answered yes, and x is among these values. And for values from 1 to 8, we know that Bob have not made any line yet. So this is the state of knowledge, I like to call it like that. State of knowledge. The complete state of knowledge is the number of lies depending on the value on the actual value of x. So if x is among these values, then there were no lies, and if x is among these values, there was the most one lie. So this is actually the state that we are in right now. Maybe. And now we can continue asking questions. For instance, assume here, maybe let's continue here. We are in this situation, Bob answered yes, and now Alice, for instance, can ask is x is at most b for some b that is greater than a. This is one possible question that Alice could also take, and Bob answers yes. Assume this scenario. What happens next? What is our state of knowledge after this question and answer?
The intersection of the possible solution intervals is where the number lies. Whenever you ask a question, you get a solution interval. So in this case, after two questions, the intersection of the intervals will be where the answer lies.
Yes, so the intersection of which intervals?
For example, let's say the first question it says x is less or equal than a. Then the intersection of the x that are less or equal than a and the intersection of the answer of the second question will be where the solution will be.
So here the interval is from 1 to a.
Yes.
Here the interval is from.
I don't know whatever it says.
Yes. Exactly.
Okay, from the start to b. So the intersection of those two intervals is where the answer will be.
Well, not necessarily. X could be, for instance, a plus 1. Then Bob lied here and said true here.
So the intersection.
Yes.
Let's see. Let me look and see.
Okay. So maybe let's continue the analysis in the ways of the states of knowledge. So what do we know here? For the values from 1 to 8. Yes, from the values here. This is the point that was a bit missing in your solution. So, what are the number of lies? From 1 to 8? 0. There were no lies. From a plus 1, here. From a plus 1 up to b, there was 1 lie. And from b plus 1 up to n, if this was the value, then Bob would lie twice. Because we will lie both on this answering this question, both answering this question. So we know that if actually Bob lied twice, then these values are not possible anymore because Bob can lie at most once. So x couldn't lie, x couldn't be in this interval. It's always this interval or this interval. However, we know that these two intervals are different for us because here, if x is here, then Bob didn't use this lie yet. And if x is here, then Bob already used this lie. Okay, and we might notice, so the question is, are we really getting anywhere in this analysis of the problem? And we would really like to get somewhere, and we would really like to get to some dynamic programming approach. So, first of all, what would be the states of the dynamic programming? Of course, the states of knowledge. So we would like to know, for each state of knowledge, what is the minimum number of questions that Alice has to ask, so in the worst case, to obtain a solution. dB is from states are states of knowledge. the value in the dynamic programming will be the minimum number of questions. Of course, worst case. So, and then we start with the state of knowledge, which is all zeros, and we end in states of knowledge. What do we have actually? What are the final states of the dynamic program?
Every number but 1 is greater than 1.
Yes. So start the zeros and the final states. Well, people call final states sometimes the starting state, final states. It is something at least 2, then 1 is less than 2, and then it's at least 2. So now we can note that actually, what is the number of possible states of knowledge? Well, we see that if we have 2 or more lies, then actually we don't care about the actual number of lies because it is at least 2, so this is not a possible value of x. So all the values, like the states, are all of the form 0 or 1 or 2, then 0 or 1 or 2, and so on. So we know that there are at most 3 to the power of n states. Well, actually, you might see that this number is really should really be smaller than this, but let's just stop with it for a moment. So let's just assume that there are at most 3 to the power of n states, and we will analyze how many states are there just in a moment. A particular number of states. So how does the solution really look like? How does the dynamic programming approach look like? We will have 2 stages, the minimum stage and the maximum stage of the solution. So assume we are in the state of knowledge. And here, first of all, Alice decides. Alice decides what question she asks. So she asks the question, is x at most 1? Or is x at most 2? And so on, or is x most n minus 2? These are the questions, possible questions that she might want to ask. And for each of the questions, Bob can answer. So this was the Alice job, and now comes Bob and answers yes or no. Yes or no. Yes or no. And after each such answer, or maybe let's get these answers written here. Yes, no, yes, no, yes, no. We get a new state. Some state, and so on. And then, so we would like to have a dynamic programming approach. So for each of these states, we will be computing the minimum number of questions. And from these results, we would like to have the result for this state. So maybe let's call this, let's denote this state somehow. This will be S1 yes, S1 no, S2 yes, S2 no, and so on. And this is the state S. So the question is, what is the value of the state S depending on the values of all the following states in the transition? And here comes the pair of minimum and maximum stages. So Alice can choose the best question out of these and ask it. So here we want to find the minimum. Let's write it in dark. Minimum. Maybe I should write it in dark. So here I will choose the minimum of the values of the states that are considered below. On the other hand, Bob's answer can be malicious, because Bob wants Alice to ask as many questions as possible. So here we need to consider the maximum, since in this case we have two states, and Bob can ask if the worst answer, the answer that leads to the larger number of questions that need to be asked. So here we have to consider that the number of questions can be as large as the maximum of the rule. However, here Alice can choose the best option out of all questions that she can ask. And this gives the formula. So the answer is, we take the minimum over the values of maximum of Si yes and Si no. And this minimum is for all I from 1 to n minus 1. And this is, okay, but here is the value. Excuse me. So the value of Si1 and the value of Si no. So this is the right formula in the dynamic programming language. The answers of Bob can be malicious. On the other hand, Alice can choose the best option for her. And this is basically how the dynamic programming approach can work here. I hope this is quite understandable what I mean here. So we know how to write a program. We know what is the initial state. We know the final state, and just we perform the search on the graph, and we have terminal. Okay. So now we have to think about the complexity of the solution. How many states are there? How do you think? What is the actual number of states that are possible? The exponent n to the power of 4.
500 to the power of 3, maybe.
So n to the power of 3. Yes, this is quite a good estimation. So we have n to the power of 3 states. So we have to ask ourselves, how do the states actually look like?
Maybe 2 instead of 3. It's enough.
3.
Maybe n to the power of 2 is enough. No?
I don't think so. So each state is a sum of, you either have such, we add such sequences to the whole sequence. We either add sequences like that, or we add sequences like that. This is if Bob answers yes, this is if Bob answers no. Yes, no. And each time we start with a state all zeros, and then if Bob answers yes, we add up such a sequence to our sequence, and if Bob answers no, we add up such a sequence. So summing up a larger number of such sequences gives us a sequence of the form. We have some zeros, we have some ones, and then we have some twos. Yes, this is the only type of sequence that we can get out by summing this, because remember that if we add something to a 2, we actually get a 2, because 2 is just for us, because 2 is like infinity. And here on the other hand, if we have a number of these, we have 2s, 1s, and 0s. If we add up the number of such sequences, then we always get a sequence of such a form. Of course, there will be no 2s, no 1s, or no 0s in both of these forms. And the only question is, how can we add up two sequences of this form and this form? What are the possible results? If they are really far together, far from each other, then we have 2s, 1s, 0s, and then if this aligns like this, then we have 1s and 2s. On the other hand, if we have a different alignment, so that, for instance, like that, so that here it aligns like this, then we can have 2s, 1s, 2s, 1s, and 2s. These are two possible ways of adding up two sequences of this form. Well, this is not so straightforward. You could just rethink it by yourself. And now, we can try to see what is the actual form of the state. So here we have I1s, J0s, k1s and the number of 2's on both sides. But we don't actually care what is the number of 2's here and here. The number of questions that we need to ask from such a state only depends on the numbers I, j, and k. If the number of 2's, like we know what is the number of 2's from these I, j, and k, but we don't really care if there are more 2's here or more 2's here. The number of 2's is just totally regardless, like it's unnecessary for us to know it because we can just shift the questions that we ask. So we just ignore this one. So this is one type of state, and there are, of course, n to the power of 3 substates. On the other hand, here we have I1s, J2s, K1s, but the states of the second form are actually very simple to analyze because, like all these, if I and K are positive, then such a state actually, like by asking questions, it really resembles binary search. So we can just add, like, okay, maybe let's have also n to the power of 3 such states. Let's have n cubed. But well, one could also just compute the answer for such states just separately. Computing the answer for such states is just some combination of logarithms and as well. So we know that we have n to the power of 3 states, and since the formula works for, again, for n values, the time complexity is that we get is n to the power of 4. And it is always a good habit to ask, can we do better? And yes, we can do better. This is actually quite interesting, that we can get below n to the power of 4. I guess that there are 2 possible ways of getting below. Maybe I'll just give some intuition on that, and you can think on it by yourselves on this because it's quite interesting. There are 2 possible ways to go. The first way to go is to note that what is the magnitude of the maximum value of a state. Well, we have a solution that works, that gives 2 log n plus 1 questions. This was the first basic stupid solution that's binary search. So we know that all values are at most 2 log n plus 1. So this is one observation that one can perform. And from this observation, maybe we won't explain how can you do it. You can obtain n to the power of 3 times log n times I. This is a nice exercise of like manipulating a few arrays to get to such solution. But maybe let's concentrate on the second way to go. The second way to go is to see how the values of the states really connect to each other. For instance, assume that we are in such a situation and we consider 2 states, Si yes and Sj yes, for I smaller than j. And the question is, how do values of these 2 states, here, Si1, yes, Siy and Sjy, how do values of these states really compare to each other? Well, actually here, if we have this value of the state here, we know that by answering yes, Bob added to our state of knowledge such a sequence. And by answering yes here, Bob added to our state of knowledge such a sequence. So actually we have more information in the state of knowledge. We have more excluded values, or at least not as many excluded. At least as many excluded values as here comparing to here. So we can show that the value of Sij and the value of Syj, so this value is at least as large as this one. And here we have more information on the other way. The value of such state, because we have less information added, could be as large or larger than the value of such string. So this is the condition that we get. We have a similar condition for value as I know, value as j know, for any two states, because here we add up different sequences to our state of knowledge. And by noting these two inequalities, we see that the minimum that we are really computing here is that we have one sequence S of SIYs that is increasing, that is not decreasing, and we have a sequence of SINs that is, so maybe let's write it in different color, SINs, which is on the other hand non-increasing. And we see that only as in each point we take the maximum of the two values, then only where the two values meet we can have reach the global minimum. So the maximum of these two values and the minimum. So we have one sequence that is decreasing, one sequence that is increasing, and we all know when is the first moment when these two sequences cross. Yes. And here one could apply binary search for that. Binary search for this purpose. And this is how you can also get to n to the power cube times log n time solution. But also it is good to rethink how you can take advantage of small values of the states to also get a small solution, a faster solution. You have to memorize some more stuff. You have to a bit change how the arrays look like, so that you can compute these values more efficiently. You can have values that depend on the values of the states could also have an additional dimension, which is the actual value of the result. Okay, so this was some additional part of today's class, and now for some concluding remarks. First of all, today we have a competition that is. Just a second, I'll open the right file. So today we have an individual contest during the camp. So that is why I already sent you an email yesterday, but some of you might have just not received it. I would like you to just do in the same Google spreadsheet to insert your logins into mine so that I can produce rank list. I sincerely apologize for yesterday's problems with rank list. Maybe the problem was that I was developing the rank list just online, because unfortunately our system doesn't work well with your system for constructing rank lists. But today everything should work correctly, hopefully. So if you just the people who didn't yet give me your logins in mail, please do that on the Google spreadsheet just before the conference. Today's contest will be a final round of our national contest algorithmic engagements, and I have just some piece of advice for you, some small piece of advice, because there will be there are quite a lot of problems, and there is not a big chance that you will be able to finish all of them in time. So at some point you will have to decide which problems to solve. And most of the problems require performing one very smart observation. And some of the problems are easy, of course, but there are quite many problems that require making an observation. And this is a nice thing for you to try to choose, pick one or two problems that you like the most, and try to somehow come up with this crazy observation. It's not always that crazy, but so apart from one observation, there is a bunch of standard techniques that you have to use. And also, if you, for instance, finish the contest and you were trying to solve a problem and you didn't come up with a solution, continue thinking. Tomorrow we will talk about these problems. Pick the one problem out of these of today, which you really like the most, which Maybe there is at least one, hopefully, that you would like the most, yeah, that you just find interesting, and try to think, try to continue thinking, don't give up. Maybe you will come up with all the observations just after reading the problem, but well, it's not always the case, as we have made this contest in several places, and not all the people come up with all these observations. So you have to just, well, you know, finding these observations, sometimes guessing, sometimes you have to just experiment with some examples. So you don't need to solve all problems. And one more thing, as you try to solve a problem and you keep thinking, no, I have no idea how to solve it, then you might think that also the other contestants have quite the same problem. If you don't know how to solve a problem, then most probably many other people have the same problem. If you're all in the same situation, this might just give you the right attitude to tackling these problems. And at the very end, I would like to give you a homework which is not actually programming, which is actually another riddle. Maybe some of you know this riddle, maybe not. Just to think about, I don't know, during lunch or during free time or during work. Maybe some of you like riddles. So, there is a king, and the king has n sons. So, king and n sons of the Prince 1 up to Prince 10. And each of the sons has either a golden or a silver crown on his head. Maybe some of you know. Each son has a crown on his head. Gold or silver. None of the sons sees the crown on his own head. So each son only sees the crowns on the crowns on your head. So no son sees his own crown. All sons see each other's crowns. And the sons want to guess what is the color of the crown on their head. They cannot talk to each other. No talking permitted. No talking. And there is one nice additional assumption. They know that there's at least one gold crown. And the sons can answer the situations like that the king comes to his sons and asks, do you know the color of your crown? And all the sons answer simultaneously. So the situations like that, the question is, the king asks, what are the, do you know, maybe not what are of course, but do you know the color of your crown? Color of the crown. And the answer, all the sons answer simultaneously, yes or no. And we assume that the sons are perfect thinkers, like they can just, if there is a way for them to deduce the color of their crown, then they will do it. They will be able to do it, and they will say yes. And the question is, after how many rounds this game ends? So the goal is to show that at some point all the sons know the colors of their crowns. All the sons answer yes. Yes, so king asks the question, that the sons answer, and so on. So just to give you a brief example, assume that, okay, maybe let's make the example more funny. Assume that we are all the sons of the king, and you all have silver crowns, sorry, and I have the gold crown. Yes? And then the king asks everyone, do you know the color of your crown? And I can say yes, because I see all the silver crowns and I know that there is at least one gold crown. So I say yes. On the other hand, you see one gold crown, but there might be more. You might also have a gold crown, so you answer no. And then we can continue, and then the king asks again, and you can think what happens. And what is there a larger number of crowns? So the question is also when the game ends. Yes? So just to have something to talk about, so you can have something to talk about. There's no naming of Okay, so thank you very much.
Yeah.